We had a very, very productive meeting. We're not talking about games. We're talking about national security.
The president giving his most forceful case for the wall. They don't get a deal. He may declare a national emergency.
Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren is kicking off her 2020 presidential campaign in Iowa.
I'm not a career politician. These are dangerous times for our country.
We promised bipartisanship. Well, most of the things in our agenda are about bipartisan issues.
Democrats are now in power. Look at that agenda. It's not so bipartisan.
Economists praising the huge new job report under the Trump economy.
This caps off the best year of jobs growth in 3 years.
Sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%. If that's what radical means, call me a radical.
The media are melting down over newly unearthed video of everyone's favorite new congressman.
Yeah, what is absolutely.
I like it when she's like,
oh, look at that.
She can dance.
Spin for me, Ed.
Look at that.
maybe at 8. You have to
maybe at 8
for the spin.
State.
Yeah. No one else is dancing.
You know, I passed the baton to you, and you didn't do the spin. So
I know. The internet said either more Ed or no more at all.
Yeah.
It's very
polarizing.
No divided.
Yes.
It's a polarizing
Stop
moment.
now. My eyes are hurting.
The dancing is a little crazy.
I thought it was good.
Well,
I thought you did a great job. First time out, and I think you did really well.
Back up here from Jed. Not so much.
I just want the, you know.
He was waiting for the spin.
You want the what?
The spin.
Oh, the spin? All right. You have to stay tuned for 8 o'clock because we have a lot to get to this
There
hour.
is. What a day. I was watching casually all day, Fox News Channel, and it was moment by moment. If this is what 2019 is going to look like, good luck trying to keep up because it is nonstop.
Because the morning started with breaking news yesterday about better than expected jobs numbers. Then it continued with the president negotiating on the shutdown and doubling down on his push for the wall, focusing on substance, focusing on policy. That's what Democrats said they were going to do if they were elected to take over the House. They're going to focus on policy. They're going to focus on health care. They're going to focus on jobs, all these other things. But instead, in 24 to 48 hours, they're focusing on practically anything but jobs and health care.
Yeah, they couldn't keep the lid on it, Ed, as you said, for 24 to 48 hours. They have all these new members. These new members may have campaigned kind of, sort of, on these policies. But in reality, where's the real fuel for the Democrat Party today?
Going after that guy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Here's the initial bills proposed by Democrats in the first beginning hours of the 116th.
Feels like it's waning already.
Yeah, exactly. Articles of impeachment. Presidential candidates required to release their tax returns. Who could they be targeting that on? Who they got to protect Bob Mueller because he's been shut down. And abolishing the Electoral College. It's all
That's my favorite,
all
actually.
of those things, all four. If you look, they all look backwards to November of 2016. They still haven't given up the fact that they believe Donald Trump.
They lost the election, they said, because the Electoral College did, so they want to change the rules.
Yeah, they're also looking forward, I was going to say. That last one, Electoral College, is we couldn't win the last election. Trump won. We got to make sure he doesn't win again. We can't do it fairly. So let's try to change everything around and hope that New York and California can carry through. Maybe Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, yeah. She's running around Iowa. They love her.
The other thing we kept hearing during the midterm campaign is that we're going to restore order. We're going to bring back civility to Congress, to Washington, to the nation, that they feel like the president has debased the debate, that somehow his Twitter account is horrible. And we're going to come back now and we're going to talk about high-minded issues. We're going to be more civil. And instead, what we've seen in 24 to 48 hours is let's compare the president to Hitler. Let's attack him. Let's impeach him. And let's drop the F-bomb. Watch.
Americans elected an authoritarian, anti-immigrant, racist strongman to the nation's highest office. Much like Hitler took over the Nazi Party, Trump has taken over the Republican Party.
When your son looks at you and says, "Mama, look, you won," bullies don't win. And I said, "Baby, they don't, because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach them."
You know, what's fascinating to me about this is that when Republicans say something that even maybe uses a word that's a little off color, they always have to explain themselves. The media says, well, why did you say that? They have to answer for it. Interestingly enough, Nancy Pelosi was asked about this behavior. She's considered a leader on the left. And she said she doesn't think it's a big deal what Representative Tlaib did. Take a listen.
I'm not in the censorship business. I don't think that, I mean, I don't like that language. I wouldn't use that language. I don't, again, establish any language standards for my colleagues. But I don't think it's anything worse than what the president has said. I don't think we should make a big deal of it.
Well, and in an era of identity politics, can't censor a female congresswoman, can't censor one of the first Muslim congresswomen. She's tap dancing with her caucus. I will say this. Not only does Chuck Schumer not have control of the Senate, as you referenced, Ed, because half of the Senate is running for president.
Half the Senate Democrats will be running for president.
He can't control that. Nancy Pelosi can't control her caucus and won't be able to. She barely squeaked out the votes. She got the votes because she declared she won't give. Well, she'll give $1 for the wall. Won't give any money for the wall. That's how she coalesced her caucus. Ultimately, this is going to be a free-for-all.
Yeah.
And a free-for-all of Trump hate, not based in policy at all. And when they do talk about policy, Ed, you saw the socialist from the Bronx talk about, in order to pay for her Green Deal, 90% tax rates for certain Americans.
Yeah, she talked about 70% federal tax, but you're right. It could compare it to the era with Eisenhower when we were up near 90%. Bottom line is, the middle of the week, right before Nancy Pelosi took power, we heard these storylines of, will the Democrats overtime? Will they overreach? You know what? It didn't take a lot of time. It didn't take weeks. It didn't take days. Maybe it took hours before they started overreaching. And that's what might blow up in their face. Now, the Democrats may be the best thing going for the president right now.
I remember a short time ago when I thought Nancy Pelosi was extreme. Now she is the one that's not so good. She's trying to rein in all the crazy stuff going on in her party. It's crazy. It was just a minute ago.
So while you're seeing that little sideshow on Capitol Hill, the president's at the White House. Remember, back over the holidays, he canceled his trip to Palm Beach, said, I'm going to stay at the White House. I'm ready to negotiate. Nancy Pelosi was in Hawaii. The Democrats didn't want to move the ball forward on getting the government reopened. They wanted to wait until Pelosi came to power so they can try to claim the credit. So they passed their bill to try to reopen the government. That's dead on arrival in the Senate. So the president comes out to the Rose Garden yesterday after a meeting with congressional leaders and says, it's time for us to deal. If they don't do it, I might have to declare a national emergency and build the wall myself. Watch.
I just want to check that the shutdown could go on for months or even a year or longer. Did you say that? And
I did.
Is that your assessment of where we are?
Absolutely, I said that. We won't be opening until it's solved. We think this is a much bigger problem. I don't call it a shutdown. I call it doing what you have to do for the benefit and for the safety of our country. We set out a number, $5.6 billion. We're very firm on a number. We're not playing games. We have to do it.
So the loons on the left are doing their thing. Every day that Trump is talking about illegal immigration and the wall is a winner for him. It's common sense. And then you got the left jumping. I mean, play this for a second. Ben Cardin, he's not a particularly interesting member of the Senate, but he's a Democrat. And he had this to say yesterday, and we'll talk about it after it on another network. Listen.
We're prepared to talk with the president as to what we need for border security. We will not support a wall because the experts tell us the wall is a waste of money and it detracts from dollars being available for real border security. So we need to talk about how we can make our borders safer. And yes, Democrats and Republicans can come to an agreement on that, but it's unclear whether the president's interested in that or he's just interested in his wall.
The experts tell us. Who the hell are these experts he's talking to? No, Senator Cardin, please, honestly, friends at FoxNews.com. I'll give you my personal cell phone number. Tweet at me, whatever. Who are these experts you're talking to that say a wall doesn't matter? It doesn't work. It's absurd. It's a lie. It's an absolute lie. They know it. And they're hoping to win a political debate.
Can they show that side by side with all the clips of Chuck Schumer and all the Democrats just a few years ago advocating for that wall and making the case for why it was important, in addition to the Border Patrol agents that came out with President Trump and said, actually, in the locations where these walls do exist, it does make an enormous difference in terms of shutting down
and to be
illegal
clear,
immigration.
Schumer and other Democrats then were saying, whether you call it a wall, you call it a fence, this is one of many tools. You have drones, you have other tools in the toolbox, which is what the President of the United States is saying now. He's not saying the wall is the only thing. He's saying it's an important tool. The Democrats have completely flipped. They're not only opposing the wall that they used to support now.
They're spinning.
They're saying it doesn't work.
Politics.
And that
immoral.
Unnamed experts don't want it.
Too expensive. But, this is a partial shutdown, Ed, not a full shutdown. We've been here before. It's not Armageddon.
Oh, yes, we have.
Ed,
Let me show you the previous shutdown.
Will you please?
So we're going to go over to the touchscreen. We're going to go to our wall. It's a mini wall, if you will. A history of shutdowns. Mini wall. Government shutdowns are the result of funding gaps. So you haven't passed all the appropriations bills, so now you have to figure out how do you move forward. Since 1977, there have been 20 funding gaps that have occurred, including the current shutdown, where there hasn't been enough money in the kitty, so you can't move forward. The current shutdown has lasted 14 days so far. The key yesterday is the president, who many in the mainstream media were predicting over the holidays, oh, he's going to crack when Pelosi comes to power. He's going to back down. He's doubling down. And yesterday saying this may go on, as Pete just said, for months or even years. Moving forward, the third longest shutdown lasted 16 days. That was under, as you see, Barack Obama's watch. The second longest shutdown was under Jimmy Carter's watch, 17 days. And finally, the longest shutdown ever lasted 21 days. That was back in 1995. That was after Bill Clinton had lost control of Congress. He was in a budget battle of his own with a new speaker in Newt Gingrich. That lasted 21 days. So what's interesting when you go through all of the history of the shutdowns, you're going to hear some people, guys in the mainstream media, suggesting this is dragging on. The president, it's absurd that he would want this to go on for so long. It went on longer under 3 Democratic presidents, Barack Obama, Jimmy Carter, and Bill Clinton. They're not mentioning that.
It's so true. We have to resist these ideas that we live in some sort of an Armageddon, the most special point of history ever, where things we fought. Remember, we talked about incivility. We fought a civil war. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about political disagreements at this point over $5 billion in a wall that hopefully they can reach a consensus on. But that's why he says things like a month, a year, whatever, right. Keep it going. That's also important at the negotiating table. Your opponent needs to believe you will stay in your position as long as you need to in order to get what you want. And notice the other thing he said, which is that it's got to be $5 billion. To your point, that shows resolve. If he was out in the Rose Garden yesterday saying, well, I can take $2 billion, I'll take $3 billion, he would be negotiating with himself and going down. But you're right. He's saying this could last for months or years. And I want $5 billion. He's holding firm.
And maybe in the future, remove that word shutdown because it's actually not a full shutdown.
Yeah.
Very misleading.
Always include partial.
That's right. All right, we got some headlines for you now. 3 people are dead and 4 others injured after a gunman opens fire at a bowling alley overnight. An officer trying to save someone's life inside Gable House Bowl in Torrance, California, near L.A. Authorities say all victims are men, and police have not identified the shooter or the motive. The Supreme Court is considering whether or not to hear their first challenge to Roe v. Wade since Justice Kavanaugh joined the bench. An appeal in Indiana wants to enforce a state law that forbids abortions by women who cite Down syndrome or the sex or race of the fetus as a reason for ending a pregnancy. Next week, we could hear if justices will take the case. What should be former President Barack Obama's next gig? An NBA legend thinks the next UCLA's men's basketball coach.
Think can succeed here? What type of characteristics should UCLA look for in the next coach?
Barack Obama.
Could happen. Bill Walton claiming he'll keep suggesting Obama to coach until he says no. Obama is a big basketball fan and even had the tennis courts at the White House adapted so it could accommodate basketball. Those are your headlines. That wouldn't surprise me, actually. He really is into basketball. He might be good at it.
President Obama is a good athlete, but there was that one time when he used that tennis court you talk about to shoot some hoops, and he missed about 19 or 23 corners in a row.
I know.
It doesn't have great form, but
there are other times when he made the baskets, to be fair.
Nancy Pelosi taking this jab at President Trump.
I don't know if he knows how to deal with women in power and women with strength.
Coming up, a woman in power, the president's daughter-in-law and campaign advisor, is here with why Pelosi has it all wrong.
And she's running, but how long will it last? Some people think Senator Warren is the Democrats' low-energy Jeb.
Wow.
Might be right.
Is it the beer?
7 Channel 115.
Welcome back. Well, Hillary Clinton is apparently back in the game for 2020. I love that video. But it's not what you may think. Democrats looking to win the White House are reportedly turning to the twice-failed presidential candidate for advice and backing. But would her endorsement really help? Joining us now to react is senior news producer at the Daily Signal and visiting fellow at the Independent Women's Forum, Kelsey Harkness. Kelsey, thanks for being here this morning. So let me ask you that question. Would her endorsement really help prospective candidates?
Well, that's an interesting question, Pete. I would say if I were a Democrat, I would be running away from Hillary Clinton's endorsement and running to someone like Michelle Obama's endorsement, who has very high approval ratings right now. But of course, we know Democrats looking at 2020 are probably not so much interested in Hillary Clinton's name, but rather the political machine that is behind her.
The money, the fundraising list, the access, things like that. Here's some of the Democrats that met with her. Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper, the L.A. mayor has met with Hillary Clinton. So you're saying, hey, they know her brand is tarnished. They can't run as her, but they want access to power that she has.
Absolutely. And I would add to this that any talk of Hillary Clinton endorsements is likely an attempt by Hillary Clinton and the machine behind her to also keep her and her name relevant. We know she is still on the speaking tour, bringing in thousands of dollars. And so I think it is an attempt by Clinton supporters to keep her very relevant to the conversation. She just doesn't want to go away.
No, she doesn't. A statement from her spokesman, his name is Nick Merrill, a Clinton spokesman, said, "I won't comment on private discussions she's had, except to say that she's more than happy to talk with anyone considering a run about the challenges as well as the great things that go with it, and lessons learned on what to watch for in this next cycle. Aside from Vladimir, she just won't let it go. In her mind, she is President Clinton." Well, let me transition, though, to a second topic. Elizabeth Warren, who the president has aptly named Pocahontas, already on the trail in Iowa. I mean, it almost feels forced. Does she feel like, and some are comparing her to Jeb Bush, seems to be a front runner on paper, but does she really have the energy and the interest of grassroots Democrats?
Well, I actually think some of these comparisons between Elizabeth Warren and Republican Jeb Bush are insulting to Jeb Bush, because Jeb Bush actually had a chance at being the Republican candidate for president. Whereas I don't think I don't think Elizabeth Warren has much of a chance on this front. She is very unlikable. I think she's very predictable, and she has a lot of challenges. She still, months after this DNA fiasco, has not been able to get over it, and now we have her attempt to be relatable through this beer drinking, and nobody can forget about it.
She loves no one ever has said Michelob Ultra is their favorite beer except for Elizabeth Warren, because she's faking it. Kelsey, thank you very much for your time. It just feels delusional, that candidacy right now. Appreciate your time. All right. Well, the president digging in, demanding to build his wall, no matter how long the shutdown takes. One man who's been on the front lines of the border, Hector Garza, is here to weigh in on that. But first, the president's daughter-in-law and campaign advisor, Laura Trump, is on deck with her thoughts on the powerful struggle in Washington.
Nancy Pelosi retaking the gavel as Speaker of the House and taking on the president, claiming he doesn't know how to work with women in power.
Do you think he deals with you differently because you're a woman?
I have no idea. We'll see. Maybe now how he will deal with the Speaker of the House. But I hope he recognizes that a new day is dawned in America. I don't know if he knows how to deal with women in power and women with strength, but we'll see.
So what is the new House Speaker getting wrong? Laura Trump spearheaded the Trump-Pence Women's Empowerment Tour, is the wife of Eric Trump and campaign advisor to the president, and she joins us now. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Great to have you here. I found that to be such an odd comment by Nancy Pelosi, given how many women President Trump has elevated. I kept thinking of Kellyanne Conway, Sarah Sanders. I mean, the list goes on and on. Ivanka, his daughter, Gina Haspel, Betsy DeVos, Kirstjen Nielsen. I mean, the list is a mile long that I have in my hand, and I'm sure some are missing here. What do you make of this comment?
Well, first of all, I think it's ridiculous, but it's true identity politics. The Democrats really are scared of President Trump because he's doing
such a great job. And I think Nancy Pelosi knows that Donald Trump works very well with women. He was a businessman in his past. He has never cared about your gender or about your color. Donald Trump expects results, and he sees successes and failures. So that is such a ridiculous comment from Nancy Pelosi, and I think she knows that. He's going to work great with the women in Congress. I have no doubt about it. And she will see. She said, we'll wait and see. She will see. He's going to be great.
Yeah, and even while he was a businessman, I mean, so true, because so many women were promoted. It's
Absolutely.
just a bizarre comment. Rashida Tlaib has made some interesting comments about the impeachment of President Trump, coming out, not the most civil comments. I want you to take a listen and then get your response.
When your son looks at you and says, Mama, look, you won, bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't, because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach them.
Now, she's obviously a House Democrat. I thought that Democrats were supposed to be stewards of civility. Did I get that wrong?
Well, talk about a bully. She's talking about bullies. That's a bully right there for you. And she obviously doesn't understand how the impeachment process actually works, clearly. There is nothing that they're going to be able to impeach this president on. They have this notion and this dream that there is something out there. There is nothing. But I think that's what Democrats default to. They know they can't beat the president because he is doing, again, such a great job. The people of this country are behind him. I always say more people are going to vote for this president in 2020 than even did in 2016. And I think they know that. And I think they're looking for anything they can to take this president down. I think it's ridiculous. Of course, they tout themselves as being so tolerant and not judgmental of anyone and really being like a party of love. Obviously, that is not the case. It's really sad that this exists out there. But when you look at comments like this, they all come from the Democrat side. You look at things that have been said before by so many Democrats, kick them in the head when they're down. You know, Eric Holder saying that. The number of times that we've heard that people should get up and in their faces and harass Trump supporters and Republicans, it all comes from the Democrat side. And I think people are noticing that.
You talked before a little bit about people being behind President Trump, and one of those issues actually involves border security. And I just want to get your take on what's been going on with the shutdown, because there have been a lot of calls for compromise for the left and right to come together, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, to meet Donald Trump in the middle some way. And I'm just not seeing a path to compromise when you have one side of the aisle on the left who frankly seems to be making jokes about it. I mean, Nancy Pelosi saying, oh, you know, we'll give you $1 for border security, and not taking these issues of drug trafficking, human trafficking seriously. Do you think President Trump will cave on this?
Well, first of all, it's not funny. People's lives are at stake, and the future of our country is at stake. And that is why the president is taking this so very seriously. Something has to happen with this, and it wouldn't be so far-fetched that the Democrats oppose this if not too many years ago they hadn't fully agreed with what the president wants to do, wants to protect our borders. They, in the Obama days, were all in on border security, and now all of a sudden, because we have this president, they have changed their minds. And I think that's, I mean, it's a little bit ridiculous. I sure hope there is a path to getting a wall. I think this country needs a wall, and I know the president will fight to the bitter end to get it.
What if they come to the president, Democrats, and they say, all right, listen, we're not going to give you $5.6 billion, but we'll give you $3 billion. Do you think he's flexible, President Trump, on the number? Does he just want some acknowledgement of the wall? Where do you think he's willing to budge on his end?
Well, given Nancy Pelosi wants $20 billion for foreign aid, and she can't give $5 billion for our own country, I think it's going to be very hard for the president to swallow anything less than $5 billion.
Thank you so much for being here. Really looking forward to see how everything plays out, including the shutdown, and glad to see those economic numbers. Really appreciate your take on all this.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Well, the president's critics playing the race card as he stood toe-to-toe with our border officials.
This is all Donald has left. He has one thing. This wall is not a wall. It is a let's keep America white again.
Hector Garza of the National Border Patrol Council is here to set the record straight. And she's only been in Congress a few days, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is dancing. But why?
This is national security we're talking about. We're not talking about games. We're not playing games. We have to do it.
That was President Trump yesterday in the Rose Garden. He's up this morning, tweeted just moments ago, a couple minutes ago, tweeted this. He said, great support coming from all sides for border security, including wall, on our very dangerous southern border. Teams negotiating this weekend. Washington Post and NBC reporting of events, including fake sources, has been very inaccurate, to put it mildly. So a lot going on, cross currents of information. Who's saying what? What's possible? What would a deal look like? Let's bring in Hector Garza, Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council. Hector, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for being here.
We saw you stand with the president in the briefing room. You're here with us this morning. Your take on where we are on getting a wall built and the necessity for it.
So we said this before, border security is national security, because what happens at the border and what comes across that border doesn't stay at the border. It actually continues into the interior of the United States, and it affects a lot of Americans. Now, what's happening at the border right now is a national security issue, and we've seen an increase in apprehensions of illegal immigrants coming across. We've seen an increase in narcotics coming across. And if Congress will not fund border security and that border wall, then President Trump should use his authority to make sure that he protects Americans. It has to be done.
Well, Hector, when you talk about that crisis, we want to go through the stats so people actually get the facts and not the spin. You know this already, but I want to remind our viewers, 1.7 million pounds of narcotics seized at the border. 17,000 adults arrested with criminal records. 6,000 gang members, including, yes, MS-13 apprehended at the border. We've also noticed a spike in attacks on border agents, particularly in San Diego, one of the areas we've all paid close attention to, up 300% from you see there in 2018. So you can see that there is a crisis as the president lays out. But defend what you just said about, yes, the president should assert his powers and declare a national emergency, basically executive power. I thought back in the Obama administration, this president said that that would be an abuse of executive power and that you should go through the normal process and go through Congress.
Well, when Nancy Pelosi says that she's only going to appropriate $1 for the border wall, that's very irresponsible. And it's very clear that some politicians out there are not serious about border security, and they're putting their political futures ahead of border security and the safety of the American public. As Border Patrol agents, we need this wall. We need the proper funding for border security so that we can keep Americans safe and we can keep Border Patrol agents safe. As a matter of fact, last night I was talking to some agents that are working the San Diego border, and they were being rocked by illegal immigrants from Tijuana. Luckily, the only thing that kept them safe was the actual border fence that we have in California right now. If it wasn't for that physical barrier, they would have been injured and hurt.
Hector, go ahead.
No, Hector, I was just going to say that the media commentary on some of this has been so outrageous to me. Donnie Deutsch on another network was saying, you know, that I'm sorry, what was the exact quote? You guys just moved that on me. I wanted to get it exactly as he said it.
Let's keep
that the press briefing that included you was to keep America white again. Now, what they don't know, you are Hispanic American, and 51% of Border Patrol agents are also Hispanic American. How out of touch is the media on this issue?
Well, definitely very out of touch. And yes, I am a proud American, but I'm also proud Hispanic. And at least 51% of our workforce in the Border Patrol are Hispanics. And it's just very irresponsible that any media organization would encourage or condone that type of rhetoric. Now, it's interesting because that type of behavior encourages other media organizations to do the same. As a matter of fact, the Laredo Morning Times from my hometown ended up publishing an article that kind of spread that type of hatred against what our Border Patrol agents were doing. Instead of reporting on the facts and that Border Patrol agents are demanding a wall to protect our country, they decide to report on these other things that are not important.
This is exactly what that gentleman had to say on another network. Watch.
You have 4 white men. You have 4 stoic, strong white men of a certain age, not smiling, by the way. And, you know, look, this is all Donald has left. He has one thing. This wall is not a wall. It is a let's keep America white again.
So your age matters. Your stoicism matters. Apparently, you're all white guys and you're angry. Where does that perspective come from?
Well, it's clearly the Trump derangement syndrome from all these people. They should be reporting on the fact that President Trump is actually reaching out to Border Patrol agents, and he's actually listening to the men and women of the Border Patrol to find out what those needs are. Now, when we talk about a border wall, we've made it very clear that we need a wall in strategic locations. That feedback came from Border Patrol agents that are working the field and going straight to President Trump. And that's where President Trump is working with our Border Patrol agents.
Hector, the left, though, some Democrats say, the experts say you don't need it. Who are their experts telling them that you don't need a border wall? Who are these people?
Currently, these people have never walked or worked in the shoes of a Border Patrol agent. We get all these talking heads that come out on all these shows and MSNBC and CNN, and they're talking about how walls do not work. But come on, they've never been to the border. Some of these people have no idea how the border works. Border Patrol agents are the real border security experts. We work it every single day.
Wait, so you're saying if we want to learn about the border, we should listen to Border Patrol agents?
It's a novel idea.
Very interesting concept. Hector, appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for your service to our country, too. Appreciate it.
We're going to turn now to some headlines for you. A police department is imploring people. Oh, an officer is rushed overnight after getting hit by a car while on duty. The sheriff requesting people to, quote, just pray. The officer is in serious condition. No word on who the other driver is or why they hit the officer. The father of a student killed during the Parkland school massacre is appointed to the Florida Board of Education. Governor Rick Scott assigning Andy Pollack to the role. It still needs to be confirmed by the Florida Senate. Pollack's daughter, Meadow, was among 17 people killed at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School last February. A $1 million business owner is accused of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars in food stamps and child care benefits. Pennsylvania officials say Kimberly Coleman faked her address to accept nearly $200,000 in state money. If convicted, Coleman could face 21 years in prison for welfare fraud. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is responding to haters after getting criticized for this resurfaced video. How, you ask? Well, with more dancing. Freshman progressive congresswoman joins a list of other politicians caught breaking it down, including George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and British Prime Minister Theresa May. And those are your headlines.
No, you can't call what Theresa May was doing dancing.
They forgot to include Ed Henry, though. You know,
she's a good dancer. Like, I don't know why people think that hurts her.
No, it helps her. It makes her relatable, and it's yeah. She'll be more popular for us having shown that.
Rick is also a great dancer. He doesn't show it off a lot, but he's a great dancer.
No, I think she could give Theresa May some dance lessons.
Yes,
that's true.
They should arrange that. It would be very good. Guys, it's pretty nasty outside this morning. Is it nasty out?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It is. It's very nasty out. Take a look at the weather maps. Show you what's going on. Welcome from Florence, South Carolina, by the way. And we've got a storm right along the coast across parts of the Northeast. We're going to throw some... What's that? They're working on maps. They're working on maps right now. We'll see if we can get them. We're having all kinds of map problems. Big storm across parts of the Northeast, just along the coast, so go to interior sections. Not that bad. Temperature-wise, things are looking pretty good as well. A little bit cooler out across the Intermountain West, and we are going to watch a new storm that moves in across parts of the Pacific Northwest, down across parts of California throughout the day today. All right, guys, send it back to you inside.
Hey, Rick, not many maps, but that one map you had was great.
Did you like it?
It was good.
Do you know what? It was the wrong map, too.
You know what? That's why people stick around for the next hour.
Yeah, exactly.
By then, we'll be ready to go.
Yeah.
All right,
thanks, Rick.
And look at that kid. Yes, sir.
He was very
polite. I know, very
Kudos
polite.
to those parents.
That's
Love it.
Good point.
Right.
All right. Coming up, if you're 21 years old, you're old enough to fight for your country, but not old enough to buy a gun. At least in one state, the latest attack on your right to bear arms and if it actually protects Americans.
And snowflakes wanted. The military having a hard time recruiting millennials. Could it be a patriotism problem or a youth problem?
Is that a real poster?
Joe Jones, a man who had no hesitation in serving this country. All right, anyone under 21 years old now banned from buying what are being called semi-automatic assault rifles in Washington state. The voter-approved law is part of a gun safety initiative, that's what they're calling it, making Washington state's gun laws some of the strictest in the nation. But this has drawn a court challenge now from gun rights advocates, including the NRA. They say the move violates the Constitution. Here to debate, NRA TV correspondent and attorney Colion Noir and Democratic strategist Jonathan Harris. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Jonathan, you say that this is a step in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is something that's been passed in several other states. There was, I think, 60 or 70 measures are passed across the country to combat gun violence. It's very important. They recognize that this is a complex issue and that this is just part of the problem. And this isn't anything that's a major change. It just basically ups the age from 18 in Washington state to 21. So it's nothing major. And as I said, it's a part of a complex solution to America's obvious issue with gun violence.
So, Colion, you heard it right there from Jonathan that this is a modest measure that he thinks is going to help people. What say you?
I disagree, actually. I think the measure is disrespectful. I think it's dangerous, and I think it's disingenuous. I think it's disrespectful in that it says to an 18 to 20-year-old that I can go to another country with a fully automatic machine gun and fight for the country, but then when I come back to my own country, I can't use an AR-15 to defend my life. It's also dangerous in that 18 to 20-year-olds already can't own handguns in Washington, and now they can't own rifles in Washington. So now they have no ability to protect their lives and their families. And I think it's disingenuous in that more than double the number of people every year die from being stabbed to death, and nearly double the number of people each year die from hands and feet. But yet, here we are talking about rifles, which account for less than 2% of gun deaths in this country.
Jonathan, answer that, because if you look at what's been happening in the UK, you crack down on guns, and we see stabbing deaths very often in the city of London, for example, right now. So respond to what you just heard.
Right. Look, there are going to be a million different ways that criminals are going to find a way to hurt somebody, injure somebody with one weapon or another. What this is specifically talking about is assault weapons, semi-automatic weapons that allow, like shootings in Las Vegas, that allow you to kill incredible amounts of people before law enforcement or anyone can stop you. That's what this is about. And I understand the correlation between a war zone and our streets, but let's not turn our streets into a war zone. That's not what this is about. People have a right to bear arms. This is not saying anybody can't own a gun. It is a very specific type of weapon, and it is to a very specific group of people. And it was a part of much larger sweeping legislation about waiting periods and things like that. It is not an assault on the Second Amendment, and that's how it tends to be painted.
Colion, you hear that argument a lot, as was just articulated, that after Parkland, after Las Vegas, this may not be something that you like, but that we have to try new things. How do you respond to that?
Well, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree, considering that now, with this new passage of this law, 18 to 20-year-olds can't own a gun, period. They already couldn't own a handgun. Now they can't own rifles. And this includes all rifles, including those as small as a 22-millimeter rifle as well, which a lot of kids grow up utilizing with their parents, shooting in their backyards. So it actually strips 18 to 20-year-olds from their right to own a firearm. And so as far as the mass shootings are concerned, if we really want to get down to the real heart of this issue, we really have to start addressing and talking about what's going on in our inner cities, what's going on in places like Washington where you have heroin epidemic. The issue isn't about firearms. I don't think we have a gun problem in this country. I think we have a suicide problem.
Yeah.
I do think we have a heroin problem in places like Washington. And I think we have a socioeconomic problem going on in places in our inner cities, which creates the conditions in which we have this.
You're not seeing mass shootings in inner cities. That's not where you're seeing them. And that's what this is intended to address. This has nothing to do with inner cities.
Jonathan,
it's about mass shootings.
And you're absolutely correct. And the one distinction that you see in a lot of the schools in the inner cities is that they have metal detectors. But when we start to have that conversation about doing that in places where we've seen these types of shootings, we don't want to even go in that direction because we never want to imagine the thought of these kids having to go through metal detectors.
Very respectful debate. We appreciate it.
Like suburban America.
All right, pardon me. Make sure you let us know what you think. Friends at FoxNews.com. Gentlemen, appreciate both coming in.
Thank you.
All right.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Still ahead. December's jobs report blew away expectations. We'll break it down and what it means for you and your wallet coming up. And snowflakes wanted. Both the British and U.S. militaries having a hard time recruiting millennials. So could it be a patriotism problem? Joey Jones lost his legs in a bomb blast in Afghanistan. He knows a thing or two about sacrifice. He's here to react live next.
Welcome back. Well, the British Army making a hard pitch to millennials with a new ad campaign, including posters like these targeting me millennials, binge gamers, phone zombies, and snowflakes. Their message, your army needs you. Meanwhile, here in the U.S., the New York Times publishing this headline, the Army in need of recruits turns focus to liberal-leaning cities. So we asked the question, is it hard to get the modern millennial to fight for their country? Joining us to respond, retired U.S. Marine Corps bomb technician Joey Jones. Joey, thanks for being here this morning. We'll get to these posters, which are patently interesting / absurd. But the deeper issue is patriotism being infused into the younger generation so that they have the spirit to want to put on the camouflage of their country?
No, the answer is no. I mean, think about it, Pete. We enlisted because we sat in high school or
or just before and watched 2 towers fall, and we answered a call to our country to go out and defend it. Now we're on our 3rd president that's done a terrible job of inspiring us on the war overseas. We have a lack of a definition of what we're fighting for, or where we're fighting, or who we're fighting, or for how long. And our military and by and large our leaders have done a terrible job telling us and explaining to us why we're at war and why we should enlist and why we should feel pride and go out and fight for this country. You know, we have multiple special operators on trial right now today for doing what they believed was what they were being asked to do, to go out and fight and kill terrorists. We have a VA that's completely inept. The military makes promises like college. It's up to the VA to fulfill that promise. Sure. Millennials have access to information, and they see that when the government promises you things to come in and fight for it, it rarely fulfills those promises.
Joey, I mean, this British ad campaign, which we saw the posters, it's phone zombies and snowflakes and binge gamers. They say, we want me millennials. They're seeking them out for their self-belief. Now, last time I checked, service is about self-sacrifice, serving something greater than yourself. How does the self-esteem and self-belief translate into modern service?
Well, we have a generation of Americans that believe they're entitled to go to college, that believe they're entitled to some sort of income equality, that believe they're entitled to a management position. So how do you take those people that believe they're self-important and put them into a place where the first thing they do for 3 months is get told how unimportant they are and
Yes.
humbled and rebuild into something that's worthwhile and a part of a team? So I understand the challenge. I understand why you might want to appeal to that. Hopefully they're training them otherwise once they get them in. Well, but you have to look at this.
You have to get them in to train them once they get in. That's the problem. Hence why they're going to these absurd lengths. Joey Jones, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. We got to leave it right there. More Fox and Friends on the other side.
It was time to update the bathroom.
But we wanted to work with a company we could trust.
And Rebath made it effortless. A Rebath design consultant came to our home and presented us ideas and products in a way that made our decision simple.
They took away the old, installed the new, and gave us the bathroom
we always wanted.
Trust Rebath with the safety in your bathroom. Call 866-5REBATH for your free in-home design consultation today.